Today's guest is back by popular demand. It's Guru Ameen Alai, the mad scientist, whatever you want to call him. Ameen, welcome back, first of all. And
thank you, Dave. Thank
second
you.
of all, I know you're you got a show coming up you're competing in at the Masters North American, huh?
I'm gonna give competing one more attempt because I just always felt like, I mean, there is no qualification really for the Masters, but yeah, it's gonna be Masters, and it's classic physique. It's something I think I stand a chance in. Bodybuilding I never stood a chance in, so this is something I might be able to stand a chance in.
How old are you now?
I'm 45.
Okay, so this is like your. Wouldn't it be ironic if you got a pro card at like 45 after taking off like what 20 years? You haven't been doing this.
I mean, I think that is just kind of part of what would be ironic about it. There's so many other things that would fall into play. I mean, Dave, I never really mentioned this to you, but I've had a series of surgeries over the past several years, and one of them was a neck fusion, 5 and 6, from a degenerative disc disease that I have.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I inherited from my father. And when after the neck surgery, they're like, you won't be able to lift your son up, so don't worry about lifting anything over your head. And I recently deadlifted 405 again.
Wow.
Squatted 265 for 5 again. And, for me just to be able to do that, just period, at my age, not to mention the fact that I had surgery just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I think it would be very ironic if I win this. And if I do, it's probably going to be a number of factors other than size.
Are you afraid when you lift in the gym now? Because after you get a surgery like that, it's so severe. It's like, yeah, you worry that, hey, what if I screw it up, and I'm gonna wind up even worse, and then I only have myself to blame for it.
I was worried. I asked my doctor on multiple occasions about the hardware that they have. There's titanium fused in my neck, and he was very adamant on saying that no amount of weight that I lift is going to make it move. Oh. And then I hinted on some of the weights that I wanted to conquer, and he says that's fine. He goes, you may have inflammation, but that wasn't really so much what ended up being the issue. The issue was recovery.
Right.
Being able to recover from workouts that typically I would be able to do and recover from. I don't think it even has to do with the gear. I just, when you're older, you just can't recover as well as you used to.
Are you training less for this show than you've done in the past, like taking maybe more days off during the week?
I have been, but there's been a slow progression with that. And that slow progression leads to basically right about now where things increase to cardio twice a day from once a day to, training a little bit later in the day so I can get some hard fat burning in. And, I mean, it's hard for me being a guru to get advice from people, One of the people that I get to call and show my pictures to is IFBB pro Dominique Cardone. Mm-hmm. And he's been kind of like a friend to me in this, helping me out, letting me know, like, you need to be more conditioned, you need to drop the water, you need to forget about thinking you're flat and, eating carbs, which if you're, training yourself, it's easy for you to say, I need a refeed or whatever. But when someone else takes a look at you and says, no, you need to drop more water and, stay on the low carbs, then you got to really assess it when it's somebody that knows what they're talking about. Like if you were to tell me the same thing.
Sure. Are you doing the same type of drug regimens that you've used in the past on your clients?
Well, I got to say that I think I've been a little bit unfair with some of my clients as far as the injectable routine. I attempted to, but I've noticed that it's just too much.
For you, yeah.
It's too much, man. I know people are like, what does he mean it's too much? I'm like, well, for one, I really wanted to find out exactly what was hurting, if there was something hurting, what was going slow. So I broke everything down into each drug, so Masterone, Trenbolone, Primobolan, every different thing that I'm taking, test propionate, all those. And I look at each syringe and I'm thinking to myself, I don't really see how this is going to make me win. Like, it's not. What's going to make me win is really cutting back on the eating the carbs, doing more cardio, doing the stairs more for me.
So you're a low carb guy too.
I'm not, but I need to be, and I think everybody does. I think people.
I agree. Everyone, people yell and argue, but they
listen. The difference is that and I think we could get to what my hell week, and am I going to do my own hell week? I think is what we kind of like are getting towards.
Yes.
And it's like, would I be able to actually handle it? And why did I create it? Why did I create it was not for other people. It was because I came in second at a show as a middleweight at 18 right before the DC Grand Prix. It was 2 weeks, and I really wanted to do something drastic to look better. I looked really good at 172. I came in second as a middleweight, and I was full, and I looked good, but I wasn't shredded. And I did this crazy hell week, and I dropped down from 172 to 153.7 in the morning for weigh-ins. It was when weigh-ins were in the morning, though, Dave, right before the show. And, I was peeled. I looked crazy. People thought I was smoking crack in the audience. My friends were like, why does his face look like that? What's wrong with him? And so this hell week is kind of what I put myself through hell, because I came in second. This is how I was a teenager, man. I came in second. I'm not going to go through hell or I want to win or else. And so I did something that I absolutely knew nobody else would do. It was insane is what it was. And then as a result of the way I looked, the first person that wanted me to help him was Don Long. He was there in the audience cheering for me, which was great because I had him, RJ, they were all from the gym, his whole crew. Kamali was there. I mean, it was great. They were all cheering. And then after that, it was like, okay, well, he really looked good for a kid. And then since then, it never really, I never really had that conditioning because I started helping other people. They went through the hell week and did really well, but also at the same time, they weren't in shape like you were. Like when we saw you at the juniors, we were like, damn, he's shredded. And everybody was like, the guys that knew me were like, what do you think he did? I mean, what do you think he did? What diuretics do you think he did? No, they were all asking me, man, because we saw you and we were like, right. His condition was you were so grainy. And at that time, we didn't really see that too much, even on the pro level. So it was very rare. And I was wondering whether you did something crazy like I did. And then come to find out, no, nobody really did anything like that. And, I don't know if it didn't work on some people sometimes. I got to tell you, there's like Abbas Katami, who I helped on multiple occasions. We did this multiple times. It did work great twice. It worked fantastic. 2 other times it didn't work as well. And there were other contributing factors, and I don't want to really mention them right now, but it really has to be done precisely. And I think we could get into like what it involves, like the basics. Yeah,
well, it's a crazy workout thing, but I think it works best on guys that are like a little on the chubby side, like the Kamalis. You know what I mean?
They're a little bit or a little bit behind.
Right.
Whereas like, okay, for me, like I'm normally have really lean abs, like all the time. Like I have a Christmas tree that shows pretty much it's there, and that's cool. But when it gets to my glutes and my hamstrings, forget about it, man. They've got all the fat there of a 14-year-old kid, man. I got to get rid of that shit. And so that means, the anti-estrogens, you got to up those. I got to drop all the stuff that's aromatizing, and I got to, up the T3, even though that's not something that I would do. But in order to get rid of that, right, I got to do all the things that you got to do. Right. And it's when people like me who don't have a lot of muscle mass, that's really what it boils down to, okay? Talk ourselves into, I'm losing some, I'm not full, this, that. No, that's bullshit, man. You didn't train hard enough. Well, I trained my chest, and I trained it hard enough. I trained it heavy enough. I've trained my body heavy enough to know that if I do shrink down to get rid of the fat, the water misplacement is really what's going to be where it's at the end. Right. I know when we talk about diuretics and I talk about drugs like injectable Lasix, you probably say, well, there's no water being spared when you use a drug like injectable Lasix, which is the reason why it's created. It's created for pulmonary edema. You're coming to the hospital. There's tons of water around your heart. They put injectable Lasix in you because you're dying, and it gets rid of all the water in your body, including your heart. And I want to state this because out of respect for the listeners and for everybody, this is something that I did and I've done on other people with myself right there. I do not recommend anybody trying this. And I want to say I do think it's stupid. I really do. No, man, I've got to be honest, man. I mean, because I don't want somebody to say that was this all necessary, this, that, and the other. Probably not. Probably another month of sucking it up and dieting really, really hard and, utilizing stuff like good fats instead of carbs really is where it's at, okay? But you really got to fight through that mentally, and it's really difficult, and I'm not trying to give the cop out, but it's really difficult when kids drive you crazy, okay? I've never felt the craving to want to have something just simple like cream of rice just because I want my son to stop talking for a minute or something, you know what I mean? And it's bad, man, because I've always thought like I could psychologically push through it. So one of the things that was difficult for me, even when I was younger, was being able to cut out the carbs. And at that time, we didn't really know about fats. Dave, we didn't, not on our side. On our side, we were doing just basically clean starchy carbs and low-fat protein and, insulin and stuff like that. That was off-season. But when it came to getting ready for the shows, it was still just more cardio. We did clean carbs. We didn't really know about fats. Honestly, I didn't really know about fats too much until Tony told me what he learned from you. And then I learned a lot more about it from watching stuff.
And I wasn't really doing fats back when you saw me in '95 at Junior Nationals because I didn't know about them then, really. I kind of learned about them the following, but probably '96 was the first year because I over-dieted for the USA, and I didn't realize I couldn't figure out why I looked so bad. And then I didn't really look bad. I just was like too depleted. I was probably 10 pounds lighter than I should have been. And then for the Nationals, I think it was 8 weeks later, I just upped my fats. I was eating a lot of red meat and hamburgers and stuff like that, and swordfish and nuts, and I cut my carbs way back, and I looked amazing. Like, it was like my body just transformed. And that's when I really knew. I had known fats were necessary to grow, but I didn't realize that you should keep them in for dieting because no one ever did that before. And that's when I really started first really discovering what they were all about. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think, to get in shape, you got to suffer. I did a whole Heavy Muscle radio show this past week. If you listen to it, or anyone else out there, listen to it. Basically just ranting for probably a good hour on why people today are just not willing to suffer. And if you suffer and you're willing to go to the point of death, I'm talking about not literal death where you're taking drugs to kill yourself. I'm talking about suffering where you feel like you're going to die, okay? That's how you should feel all the time. The fact that you sit down and it hurts, that means you're lean, okay? Yeah. That's how I would feel for the last 2 weeks before my show. Like, I didn't want to sit on anything that was hard. Even a bed felt like too hard for me sometimes at night, and I would twist and turn because I just wasn't comfortable, because that's how lean I was. That's where you want to go. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. I just was texting with Flex Lewis before about something trivial, but then we started talking about, suffering, and he's like, I got to lose 12 pounds to make the weight class for the 212 Olympia. He goes, I don't know how I'm going to do it. He goes, I do it every year. But I said, look, you're willing to go where other people are not willing to go, and that's why you win the Olympia every year. Yeah. You're willing to suffer. It's not like he's willing to take more drugs. That's stupid. He's willing to suffer because the drugs don't get you lean. You know that. It's the removal of the food and the cardio and the actual physical suffering. Because like you said earlier, most people, when they feel that suffering coming on, what do? Oh, I got to eat. I got to carb up. I got to eat carbs.
Well, Dave,
eat more carbs.
Back in the day, I mean, just being honest, you know this because we're older now. It's different. I think Nubain helped in that aspect. Being honest,
took the hunger away, right?
Yeah, because you didn't think about it. You were just you were numb to the feeling of whether or not you were hungry. Yeah. And at the same time, because it had that, I don't feel anything, and it didn't suppress the respiratory system,
No.
you would still be able to work out or do cardio or do whatever in a fasted state. And that's difficult to do without something. Psychologically, some people can do it, and there's no question about it.
Yeah.
But now, do you add in a day of carbs every now and then?
Yeah. I mean, as people need it, I do it.
When they just super flat.
You made a good point. I want to just bring up the Nubain thing again. Nubain is, if you're a drug addict, like if you're like a narcotics addict, it's the worst drug for drug addicts because it doesn't make you that high, and it self-limits itself. So if you take too much of it, you actually just feel sick. It doesn't make you any higher. So for a guy who's looking for a high, it's probably not a good drug, but for bodybuilders, it's a great drug because it gives you a little bit of a low-grade feeling of okayness. It takes away your hunger. The problem is it's super addictive.
But that's not just that. It's just it begins at whatever the cost is for a bottle. I don't know. Let's say $60 a bottle. Okay. Yeah. But then when you end up doing $60 every other day, it gets out of hand. And then there's another problem with it. It is don't be a person. And I'm saying this because this relates to me. That's one personality that should stay away from is someone who has an addiction type mentality first, without a doubt. As a matter of fact, they shouldn't even be on steroids, in my opinion. Okay,
good luck telling everyone that.
Yeah, there isn't really room for it. But also people that want to experiment. And the reason I'm saying this is because Boston is one of those people. Okay. Right. And, you don't want to be somebody that you might feel. I was one of those people that felt like, let's see what all these things in Duchesne's book do. Let's see, and that's where, Nubain was one of them, but that's also where the injectable Lasix came in. Right. I mean, he was somebody that didn't speak negatively about it. Actually, it was deemed one of the better diuretics by him, and I can tell you why I feel that way.
Who said by who?
Dan Duchaine.
Oh, yeah, Dan Duchaine loved it because it was so predictable.
That's exactly why I like it.
Yeah, he liked to just take the water out the very, very last minute.
But he would. You would have to use slow K.
Yeah, the problem with the problem with injectable Lasix, and you can go, and I'm going to let you talk about your whole routine in a minute, is that you don't know if you're losing potassium or sodium, so you have to supplement with potassium. There's like too many variables in there, and the problem is that most bodybuilders are retards, okay, when it comes to figuring out mathematics.
Absolutely.
So if you told them to take, a certain amount of cc's or a certain amount of milliliters, they would take double or triple that, not purposely, but because they just don't know how to figure things out. It happens to people all the time. I can't even believe how many people can't measure and figure out simple math equations. I have to do the math for these people, my clients.
Or if they have the wrong dose potassium, that's the big one. Because
you can kill yourself with that. So it's easier to give someone a half a diazide and hey, what? If you need more, you give them a little more. And if they cramp, it's a sodium cramp. So it just makes things a lot easier and safer. But Dan liked to make things complicated because he was into like experimenting, and he liked the whole science of it. Now you have an extreme diuretic routine that you use on certain people. Now I know you don't use it on everyone. Explain what it was and why do you felt it was so crazy?
I think that nobody else has done anything like this, because when I came up with it, it was an extreme, everything was an extreme measure. And so basically, like you're saying.
I think we lost Ameen there for a second. Let's see if we can get him back. I think his Skype froze on us. And we'll try to get him back. Maybe Tyler can call him back while I'm talking. Yeah, but back in the day, people did a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, Paul Dillette on stage had a number of diuretic issues. I think one of them was from taking injectable Lasix once, and he just did too much, or he took double what he should have. He didn't realize, so you could really screw yourself up. So what we're trying to do is, we want to give responsible information here, but Ameen has his little routine. I wouldn't recommend anyone, like he said, do it alone. I don't think it's necessary. I think if you're in shape, there's no reason to do anything that extreme. But sometimes people fall behind, and there's some extreme measures need to be, engaged in. We'll let everyone find out. He'll tell everyone his routine, and I'll critique it and tell him how nuts he is. But by and far, I don't think he uses it on most people. Now, when you think about, contest prep, and you think about that last couple of days, it's ridiculous to think that you have to do extreme things. And I'm always a big believer, and you've heard me say this before, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you look great a week out, don't start doing nutty, kooky things, because what happens is when you do that, invariably you're going to screw yourself up. So the less you could change that last week, the more important. Now we got Ameen back. Ameen, I was just kind of telling people, giving them a little background on the whole routine. Who was the first person you used this extreme diuretic routine on?
I used something similar to this on Don Long, but it was with aldactazide for the. It was with aldactazide, and I think it was with diazide or maxide for the junior nationals.
Okay. By the way, I want to just tell you, after the last interview we did, Don Long texted me and said that he absolutely did not work with you ever in the off season. He never took insulin under your guidance.
You know, he's.
I'm just telling you what he said.
That's fine. People have their own business, they have their own thing, and, sometimes that rubs people the wrong way, but it doesn't really matter.
No, not that he said that he never used the drugs. He said you never helped him to use the drugs. So I don't know if that's true or not. I'm throwing it out there in case you want to dispute that.
Yeah,
fact.
no, he got upset when he saw Craig come to town. He wasn't happy about that.
Oh, he didn't like the fact that you were helping Craig too?
He didn't like that I was helping Craig. I didn't like the fact that he didn't put me in flex. It was just one of those things.
Oh, so it was like a bad blood type of thing going on.
I mean, it's hard to really say. There was a lot of other things that were going on that they're like behind the scenes type stuff that was happening that kind of made everything kind of go its own way. Craig was a bad seed when he came around. That wasn't good. Ultimately, I mean, there was a short period of time where things were okay, but then he was coming to visit Richard, and it was already when he was in a bad time, setting people up and things like that. But work with someone is like what we're doing like now. Well, when you're someone like Don and you've already worked with them and you give them a plan and you tell them this is what you do and they follow it, But it's a difference of opinions, I guess, and it really doesn't really matter. The fact is that this is around the time when insulin was being used.
Right.
Kamali used it. Don used it. Kamali knows, and everybody else knows that Don was someone that I was working with. And for whatever reasons that we have, it never really came out in flex that we were working together.
Right.
Craig, on the other hand, didn't have any issues with publicity or anything like that. Flew me out to Venice when he moved out there to do a photo shoot with Flex magazine and introduced me to the bodybuilding world as his coach.
Right. And
at that point, we were talking about insulin protocols that I was using on other people. Okay, we'll just leave it as that. Other people. And it worked on all of them. Right.
All right, let's go back to, let's not get too distracted. We could do other shows on the different protocols and stuff like that for different drugs. Let's stick to diuretics. What was the extreme diuretic protocol, and what would be the conditions under in other words, what kind of a person would you use it on? What would the situation be that you'd employ? You didn't use it on everyone, I assume, right?
No, I didn't. Well, without calling out anybody that I
don't say any names. Just tell us what the routine was.
Yeah. Okay. So once I was able to get my hands on injectable laces, that's the first key right there. It wasn't even available. Most people wouldn't even get it for you, even if they knew what it was. Yeah. You couldn't get it at a pharmacy. That's the key. You could not get it at a pharmacy because it was injectable. They wouldn't order it. It was only available on an ambulance or in a hospital, usually in the ER, usually in the ER pharmacy. That's where they kept it. Mm-hmm. So you had to really have some good connection just to get it back then. Right. Well, that connection fell into my lap sometime around 92, 93. And I started using it in 94 on somebody for a competition, and it worked really well. And basically the protocol had to do with an extreme depletion. Now, the diuretic protocol that I'm talking about now evolved from doing oral diuretics to the injectable protocol. Okay. So it evolved. The original depletion was still the same depletion. That stayed.
Right.
The mineral manipulation beefed up, but it was based on the same plan, which was we were to bump up potassium before the show, take aldactone a little bit, lower the sodium, pull the water in, and then use a little bit of diazide. That was pretty much what it was then. The 100 rep carb depletion, 0 carbs, threw the body into the point where it would be able to pull in the carbs. So that,
So you would deplete glycogen in the gym, obviously, so that your body could raise glycogen synthase and you could absorb carbs better.
And sodium load. Sodium load really high, like tablespoons of salt. It was gross.
So when would you cut sodium, and when would you put your these diuretics in? And what were the dosages you were using?
The sodium was so high. Literally, I was having people put a tablespoon of salt in some water like this and just drink it, and drink some more water behind it. So there was a lot of salt being used. And it took usually about 3 days for the salt to leave the body, at least 3 days, full days. So there's 3.5 days prior to the show, there was an all-out shift from sodium loading to an all-out shift in sodium depletion. Okay? Then let's say for like the first day, that's just focusing on the depletion of sodium. Not really diuretics, glycogen loading is fine. The second day is when you start pulling the water in and start adding in the potassium that you're going to later get rid of with injectable Lasix. Okay. So the second day you start loading on potassium, and I'm not talking about potassium that you buy from the grocery store or the GNC or whatever. I'm talking about pharmaceutical potassium that is made for people that take oral drugs like Lasix or Bumix or loop diuretics like, Demodex or anything like that. And so this is a time-release potassium chloride, which releases over about 8 to 12 hours, and they're different in strengths. Some of these also are potassium chloride that you can add to a water, and you can drink it, and it's immediate potassium chloride, okay? But the key is it's potassium chloride. And they usually go by K-Dur, K-Light, K-Lor, Slow K. Those are the different ones that we have in America. And so at this point,
I just want to stop you for a second. I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to say, if you were to take Slow K and you're not taking a diuretic that causes potassium loss, you can be in big trouble. Just don't want people to know that.
Well, and let's say this beforehand. Let's identify with that big trouble. That big trouble is a heart attack.
Right.
Okay?
And death.
Yes, because the potassium will make your heart stop. Okay. And so basically what happens is we have a small window that you can load the potassium before it becomes dangerous.
Right.
At that point, then you have time-release potassium in you, and because you're posing every time you eat, you could feel whether your hands are cramping or anything like that. The minute your body doesn't release when you flex, and like I said, you're flexing every couple of hours, so it's the best gauge that we have, and you're flexing as hard as you can. The minute you don't release, when you do, like if you do a front double bicep and you don't, when you release, it still tries to pull on you, that means your potassium levels are through the roof. And at that point right then, that's when the injectable Lasix is actually needed. So it's probably the potassium loading is more dangerous than the injectable Lasix. But at this point, what happens is potassium chloride holds the water in the cell, and the injectable Lasix flushes out anything that's sub-Q. Now, it is a loop diuretic, which means it gets rid of potassium and sodium. It's going to assist in the sodium depletion, and as far as the potassium loading that we did, it'll shave off what was extra, and you'll still have enough potassium, but not any extra. Now, the trick is how many times do you repeat this process before you step on stage? Right. Every time you do it, each time you do it, you're not going to be able to have a bowel movement. So you're drying out your intestines. You can't have a bowel movement. So you have to have all of that done and all the loading done before you introduce any sort of diuretics. Because the minute you do, I don't know about you, but the most people that I've worked with get constipated.
Yeah, well, what I do is I have them use my Fiberlyze product, the whole diet, but I have them increase it to like 3 times a day when they start using diuretics, and that seems to help them go a little better because it pulls fluid into the intestinal tract, and and it makes everything move a little better. I found that seems to work really well. It was something that I used at the end because I used to always feel like I couldn't move my bowels. It was something that I fought with my whole life as an athlete. Right before a race, because we used to run road races when I was a track runner in the morning, and I could never get to my body going to the bathroom. It drove me fucking nuts. And same reason, because you're dehydrated in the morning, you know. And there's just no time to really hydrate. So when I was bodybuilding, I was discovering the same thing. That's why I loved when I moved to the portion of my career where I was competing usually on Friday nights at the night. The night show prejudgings were great because I was able to get everything moving by the nighttime. It's really hard when you have to get on stage at 9 a.m. to get everything moving, like you said. But the fiber product the night before, 3 times on the day before, seems to work really well at doing that.
And you don't get any sleep usually the night before.
No.
Let's be realistic, You're either peeing all night if you took a diuretic, or you're just amped up because you're about to compete, or you've got to be up early for your tanning. It's one thing, and that actually interferes with the bowel movement,
Sure.
It's not until you get a chance to relax and calm down that your insides can actually release,
I tell everyone to take I'm not into sleeping pills and anything like that. I tell everyone to take some Xanax the last couple of days just to make sure you sleep at night, because you're right. The water and the carbs don't go to the right compartments when you're not resting, because you have too much cortisol around.
The stress hormone.
Yeah.
If you're stressed out, people don't realize it. That's why I'm going early. I'm going a little over a week early just so that I can deplete there and not have my cortisol levels high and not worry about any of that, because, around the kids and the wife and all that, and, school, you got the teacher-parent conference and things you have to do if you're here. You can't just ditch out on them, Sure. And or else you look like a loser to the teachers. That's the worst thing, It's not like, hey, well, I do YouTube. Yeah, whatever. You're not a good dad,
Yeah.
Oh, that hurts. Not competing,
Uh-huh.
But I think if I could have people that didn't have that stubborn fat that they can't get rid of, or sub-Q water or whatever, like around the glutes, or some people just don't get their lower abs tightened and something like that. Yeah. This may be, again, I'm not suggesting this because it can kill you. So, but,
how much do you inject? How much Lasix are you injecting?
Okay, so each ampule is 20 milligrams, 2 mLs. I think they're 10. I believe this is right. They're 10 milligrams per ml. 1 cc will not make you cramp if you do like 1 slow K before it, and it has to be in you. Okay, that's okay, but that's just one isolated incident. Okay, if you potassium load and your fingers lock up or your toes lock up when you're flexing, then you need 2 cc's. You need it. You have to get rid of some of that potassium. Right. Now, there's a good and a bad side to that. The bad side is, of course, you have to do all this, which is all in itself, like I said, it's stupid, okay? Now, if this makes the difference between winning and losing, and we gotta talk about this for a sec for the people out there to understand about the genetics thing, okay? Because I don't have good genetics. My brother does. There's a big difference. You do. You know what I mean? And so when someone like me wants to kind of like compete and look as good as his older brother, I have to pull out all the tricks that he doesn't need, Right. So there's an automatic, you already have a understanding that you have to do something in order to step on that stage to look as good as these other guys who have a better body to begin with. And like I was in the gym the other day watching Phil Heath work out. We just happened to be training hamstrings when I was training quads. And I don't know what happened. I don't know who he was talking to, but I was either at the end of his workout or he stopped his workout and was talking to someone. I looked because I wanted to know when he was going to eat, because I'm curious. This guy's the best in the world. I want to know when's he going to eat. Maybe he's not eating. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I got it all wrong. I don't know. He's the best. I just wanted to look him. He knows who I am anyway. So I say hi, and I'm looking. Unless he ate and I didn't see it, it was like over 25 minutes that he hadn't eaten. And I walked by him and I asked him, I said, "Don't you have to eat?" He goes, "No, I'm all right, man." I'm like, "Man, you're gifted." He started laughing.
He's very freaky.
And I really don't think like it's that important to him. Like I engraved into the people that I help that you have to be meticulous about the food. You have to be, like this and like that. And then you come across some guys that they cheat on their diets. They don't look good. And, they have such good shape that they still beat the guy that trains his ass off and eats really hard. And, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself whether you're genetically built for this or not.
Right.
And I think that's where bodybuilding did good by making different categories. Right. Because, you may not be genetically gifted for bodybuilding, and I'm not, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. It just means I myself have done routines and given them to people and seen with my own eyes that they work much better on 99% of the people that I've given than me. And this is evident if you look at my Facebook picture, you can see I'm the skinniest one. Yeah. But so for me, Dave, honestly, just to be like this right now, just to even look like this is incredible for me. I know that I can only take so much drugs. I'm happy about that. I have all my hair. I mean, I guess I'm happy. I don't have a big stomach. I could do a vacuum,
right. Well, let's go back. I just want to just finish off this diuretic routine. I know we're getting a little distracted. So you'll use 10 to 20 milligrams of injectable Lasix per run. How many times do you have to do this to people? And when do you start that? You start it the day before?
So the most I've ever used on anybody, and I want to, again, we're not here to mention any names or anything, but he did win the whole show. And it was a very big show. It was 9 cc's total. There's always a 1 cc tester. This is an IV, by the way, guys. I don't want anybody to think we're shooting up. We're not shooting up.
Where are you putting it?
In the shoulder,
okay.
Sub-Q. Yeah, it does burn a little bit, but it doesn't burn as much as Nuvain. It's not that bad.
I heard a lot of people do it. It's usually done IV, no?
I mean, I just, I got over that whole thing.
Okay.
And so once I got over it, I was like, and the only real reason to do it is if you're going to use an IV. And then you already have one line, and you have an additional one you can add anything to. You could just clear it and do it. That's okay. That makes sense. But once you stop thinking about sticking the needle in the vein, from the Nuvain and stuff like that, yeah. That it's a matter of timing, and it's just a matter of minutes different. Yeah. And if you know the curve and everything like that, you work on that versus the facts on the IV.
So how do you know? In other words, so you just keep. How often do you decide? Hey, you know what? I need to do more. What's your determining factor at that point? And are you using any oral, diuretics in addition, or is it just the Lasix?
Thank you for asking that, because I do. I actually do aldactone, 25 milligrams, and I usually do about 4 a day for 3 days. That's part of the sodium depletion and potassium loading. Now, it's important to understand that the aldactone is just used to assist in sodium blocking and potassium loading. I don't really care about it as a diuretic. It's so mild when you're using injectable Lasix. Injectable Lasix frequency cannot be used sooner than 8 hours. So there's only 3 times you can do it during a day. That's it. And then if you do it too close to the evening, you're going to be up all night peeing, and I found that that's counterproductive.
Right.
So there's really only 2 good times you can do it. So let's just figure the tester, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, is what it was. And let me explain the 9 cc.
And how long will you pee for? In other words, how long does it last in your system once it gets in there?
With the potassium loading, you get about 2 good urine flows. Of course, the first one's greater than the second one, and you can time them. They're usually about 12 minutes after the injection.
Oh, wow. So it's quick.
It's about that. I mean, it's pretty standard with everybody. And you can, as long as they haven't already had a full urination, given that we're talking about an hour, okay? So an hour, that's pretty much what's going to happen. Either way, they're going to have a urination in 12 minutes. It works that quickly. It makes the kidneys release. So you have to already have an excessive amount of potassium. And a lot of times, just to be safe, if there's not cramping involved, because that's a really extreme measurement at that point, that means you've kind of already let it go too far. You know what I mean?
Right.
We do a little bit of the oral, like the K-Lure, or the oral effervescent one, or some one of those, the quick release potassium chloride with right then and then you do the injectable Lasix maybe like 5 minutes later, and then that potassium is going to be pretty much readily available later on after this has drained you some, after the injectable Lasix has drained you. So I don't really find it to be, and I find the oral to be more unpredictable and dangerous. They come in 80 and 40 milligrams, and I've used those too. I don't like them at all, at all. I mean, for the main reason of it, Dave, like I know it's a drug you're against, but I think you're more against stupidity than the drug, because you would pick an injectable over an oral any day.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I've given people Lasix pills who just couldn't get any diazepam, but I use so few of them that, you know, you don't need to use potassium if you're using 20 milligrams of Lasix twice a day, you know, for that's the whole prep. I mean, just for the last day of the prep. Yeah, but I mean, when you start doing extreme amounts, obviously, especially injectable, you're going to need some potassium, but you don't really need that. So yeah, I think not anything in moderation is not really dangerous. I think it's when you do extreme things. But you know, we talked about earlier, some of these competitors are water buffaloes. I've never seen, you know, look, I never helped Kai Green, but I know Kai Green had a lot of trouble. He's a guy who could lose 25 pounds of water, you know, 3 days before a show and go from looking okay to looking amazing. Some guys, and I'm not going to I don't want to stereotype, but I've noticed a lot of African American guys tend to hold a lot of more water.
Either, but
they seem to be more resilient to the diuretics, where you have to actually give them more. You notice that?
I've noticed in particular the darker skinned people, the darkest ones, because when I've worked with in the past, they were the ones that had the issues of getting rid of that water. Yeah. That last bit of water. They just needed a little something stronger. Yeah. And then when they did, they looked great. Yeah,
yeah. So if you had to give a final piece of advice, and we'll continue this guru talk, you know, in another week or so. Final piece of advice as to what diuretic scheme you should go with after you just did this whole, you know, spiel. What would it be? I have a feeling you're going to still say you'd go more moderate.
I don't think injectable Lasix is needed at all unless you have gone through the whole process. Like, it's not something that you just want to be like at the last few days, be like, let me do a slow K and a shot of injectable Lasix. I don't recommend that. So let me just be clear on this. The whole process is you have to throw yourself so out of whack. You have, and not only do you play mind games on yourself, you start thinking this isn't going to work. Yeah. I look like, because you're sodium loading and carb depleting, you look like absolute shit. Yeah. I mean, you become so smooth, so soft, everything goes away. You have no, even if you're taking halotestin or whatever, the muscle still loses its oomph. It's gone. You know, if you get all the glycogen out, if you do it right. Yeah. And you have to be mentally focused to know that it's going to be better when you carb up for 4 days or so. Right. You know, depending on who you are. And so when you do this with the excessive amount of sodium, I mean, now I've heard you talking about just recently on the radio talk show. About how you believe that you should have more sodium in your diet.
Absolutely.
Right?
I never cut sodium until the last day. I have high sodium the whole diet.
Right. So what is high to you? Because I don't know what high is anymore.
Salting your meals, putting soy sauce on your food, not restricting salt whatsoever.
But so you would still consider like adding a tablespoon of salt and some water and drinking it salt loading, right? You
know what? I think a lot of people need to do that because a lot of people just don't like to put salt on their food. I have to have my guys sometimes forcibly eat salt. I was always a guy when I dieted that I loved salt. I put soy sauce all over everything, especially when I was low carb. It just makes things taste good. And I just it's like my body craved the sodium. Some people just hate the taste of sodium. I don't know why, because I'm the opposite. But those people, I actually have to drink it in water like you do, like you just said.
This was the only way to actually get more in, because at the end of the day, we were trying to figure it was like 4+ grams. So it was quite a bit, you know, we were trying to figure, but it was sodium chloride, which is table salt. Yeah. So we loaded on table salt, which is what you used back in the day, because we didn't have sea salt when we.
Everyone used regular salt. Who could afford sea salt? I was too worried about buying GH. You know.
You think there's any difference as far as it making you hold water?
No, I think it's exactly the same. The only advantage of table salt is it's iodized, which is good for your thyroid. So you know.
Yeah, which people don't get from the sea salt, so they get the gout. Yeah, I don't know. They should add it to it, but they
Because
won't.
I mean, you know, you're going to get an email from someone right after the show goes up, and they're going to say, "I want to hire you. I want to do the whole injectable Lasix routine."
Just because
they're extreme people. It'll probably be Boston Lloyd who's the one who contacts you saying, "Let's do it," and you'll be like, "Boston, are you competing?" He's like, "No, but I'll get ready for Saturday morning, cartoons. Let's do it." So. Is this something that you would do with people nowadays, or are you done with the injectable Lasix?
No, okay. Let me just state this, because I know that this is going to blow the lid off everybody, and I don't mean to. I'm not trying. Okay, Dave, I know you're laughing like, okay, yeah, this guy, he's been gone for years. He comes back. He fucking knows Roger Stone, all this shit.
Yeah, I want to get to Roger Stone. That's why I'm
not trying to upstage anyone, but I found a way to do this safe and to make sure that there's no mistakes to say, okay? And this is even more complicated, and again, you can't get this, so
right.
Don't try to get something you can't get. Just you're wasting your time. But let's face it, and you and I both know, when everything goes wrong, and I'll let you say it, okay? Because you already know me. When everything goes wrong, what do they do? What do they give you?
They blame the coach.
No. That's of course. What do they do to you? What do you get when things go wrong?
An IV bag. They give you sugar and salt. Yeah.
That's right. You get an IV bag. You get sugar and salt. And you once they take that thing out, you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, fuck, if I would have just looked like this, I would have won the overall. He's laughing because he knows how true this is. This happens so much. So then you have the other people that they don't have to go through this. They're smart enough because maybe they got a coach and their coach tells them, dude, your metabolism's going ape shit. Yeah. Eat fucking everything. Go eat pizza, whatever. Eat it all. You need it. And they do that, and then the diuretic doesn't kill them and they look good, whatever. With this whole thing, there is a way to do this and actually peak if you don't overdo it. And the only way not to overdo it is to have an IV bag, okay? With that being said, okay, obviously the best in the world are not doing this. They're not, okay? I promise you. I saw the best in the world. I saw him. He didn't fucking eat, man. I was watching. I don't know. Maybe that's what Honey's got him doing that day. Maybe Phil's gonna get mad at me next time. I hope not, man. He's the best of me, man. But he's so gifted that and even with you, dude, your conditioning, you were like that a couple weeks before the show, always, weren't you?
Yeah, but I was neurotically, focused and scientific about everything I was putting in my body. I wasn't just haphazardly eating shit. You know what I mean? I was like you. I was a mad scientist.
Where was your problem area? Because you had tissue, thin skin everywhere when I saw you on stage.
I just dieted really hard, and I wasn't afraid to push to that limit where I was. Look, I knew when I interviewed Dorian Yates, he said something that really rung true with me and resonated with me. He said, I wanted to go beyond what these guys were doing. I didn't want to just be as lean as everyone else. I needed to go to the next level of leanness. And that's the way, when I heard him say
Dorian didn't push it with crazy drugs, though.
Well, he dieted hard, and he just pushed it dieting hard in the gym,
Yeah,
we don't know what he did. I mean, I'm sure he probably did a very conservative diuretic, diuretic depletion. But the bottom line is, he was in such good shape before he did that he didn't have to do anything extreme.
Right.
Now, in the 90s, I was actually, following a Bob Grushkin routine. I was actually using some aldactone. But I found at some point that it was actually flattening me out a little too much.
After 4 days, no good.
Yeah, so I stopped doing the whole aldactone routine, and I just did the diazides at the end, and they seem to work really well on my body. I didn't need
I would agree with you that on the general, I think the diazide, Maxide was a good drug too, but they're both the same thing.
Yeah,
diazide is probably the safest thing, and really you should be ready ahead of time. And the God honest truth is that I have so much more new muscle on me now than I've ever had before, because I've never really had to do shows on growth, and I didn't have these drugs. I had them, but I was giving them to other people. I wasn't taking them myself. I was more scared, man. Yeah. I was scared of my body looking funny, because I was already past the point where some of my bones were sealed, but then some of them weren't, because I was still in my teens, and I have real growth, and it's like I didn't want to do it. Now I had other people around me do it, including my brother, got phenomenal results. He was one of the best people that I worked with, got phenomenal results, and you can see his YouTube video, Ameen Alai, on YouTube, his posing routine at Southern States in this condition. And I don't want to, he's my brother, and I'm not calling anyone out because I want everybody to know what happened, okay? There was 2 instances of cramping with the injectable Lasix. Can I get into this really quick, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. My brother was one of them, and he was the first. He asked me if I could get him to make light heavyweights at the Southern States in '94. I couldn't do it, and I tried really hard. I used injectable Lasix. I still couldn't do it. He just wouldn't lose the weight. I'm telling you, his conditioning was unreal.
Yeah.
And he was not going to get flat because I had loaded so much potassium. But every time I would give him Lasix, I knew I had to give him a little bit more potassium. In the middle of the night before the show, we were thinking that, and these at shows, Dave, you remember you could weigh in the night before, right. You can weigh in the morning of, and you could really press the weigh-ins. They would kind of let you to the last minute. And he started cramping in the middle of the night. I was in the bed right next to him. First, his abs cramped. Then his legs cramped, his quads cramped. So he was like this with his legs locked out. Then his hamstrings cramped while his abs were cramping, and his chest started cramping too. I started flipping the fuck out. I didn't have an IV bag. I knew that Benaziza had already died. This is my brother. Right. I was very fucking scared, okay? My instincts kicked in. I grabbed the saline solution bottle, right. Took the top off, took the big needle, sucked it all the way up, and I gave it to him, and, you know, instantly the cramps went away and it stopped, and I said, dude, I'm not doing this anymore. I love you, but we can't do this. This is it. You're not going to get any better, and, you know, just be thankful that you're still not flat.
Exactly.
And what do you think I weigh? I said, I don't know, man. Maybe we might have made it. I don't know, because he looked like he sweated a lot, and he looked a whole lot better after all that shit. He still looked a whole lot better. And no, dude, he was still 204. It was like, wow. What the fuck, you know? So that's when we met Dexter, and ever since then, he always remembered my brother from the show and me. And I met it, and I asked Dexter after the show, and without calling out Dex or anything like that, yeah. I was devastated to find out what little he did for that show. I've had my brother went through all this shit, and I'm like, and I scratched my head, and I told my brother, that man's going to be Mr. Olympia in a few years if he keeps this up, because there's no way. I know he's not lying to me, but that's, you know, that's insane, you know? And, you know, that's what happened. And he became Mr. Olympia, and every now and then I see him and he still remembers. But that's what we went through, and that was one. The second time of cramping was Abbas. And I want to say this because he didn't cramp when we did it. He cramped afterward, okay? I told him when he was drinking, he came in 4th, I think, at the USA's that year, and he was out and drinking iced tea. And he had a couple of these big iced teas, and he was drinking them, and I was telling his friends, kind of like frantically, you know, like getting on their nerves because I'm more nerdy, you know, like, no, tell him to stop, you know, he's gonna end up cramping, and they're like, dude, he's fine. The show's over. Relax. Yeah. Go have some food. You know, just chill out. It's okay, man. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. He's going to start cramping because the water. And I'm trying to explain it to him. They're like, dude, just relax, man. They're trying to like find me weed or something. You know, like, anybody got weed for this guy? You know. and I'm like, okay, all right. I'll calm down. I guess he's okay. We get to the hotel lobby, and we're literally 50 feet away from the hotel lobby elevator. And all of a sudden, he starts fucking cramping hard. His hamstrings fall like behind him. You know, both his hamstrings cramped up behind him. 2 of his best friends were one on each side carrying him while I'm running to the elevator to like get the door open and get his ass inside and get up to the room. We're getting into. I'm like, give me the key. I gotta get some shit out the room. And I'm like, this is seriously. It was one hell of a scene. It was pretty intense because I mean, Abbas is, a lot of people don't know this, but he's my cousin. And you know, cousins, but yeah, he's my cousin. And so I was really worried, what's going to happen, man? Shit, he's cramping. It's all over. So I got the 1cc. This is the extra cc. The 1cc of injectable Lasix. He's cramping. They sit him down, and I'm like, okay, give me your arm. He's like, what the fuck are you going to do? And I have a cc of injectable Lasix, and he's literally like not going to let me give it to him. And I'm trying to convince him, listen to this shit. I'm trying to convince him that he's cramping because too much water is now forced into the cell from the potassium loading that we're doing, and we must use injectable Lasix IV right now in order for him to stop cramping. Right now.
Yeah, he didn't believe you.
He let me do it. I swear to God, you can ask him this. He let me do it. Within a matter of 30 fucking seconds, his whole body had released up. And then about a minute later, he took a piss. And he was like, how did you know? How did you know that was going to stop it? And I'm like, man, that's why they call me the mad scientist.
I mean, before we go, good story, by the way. Before we go, Roger Stone, one of your very good friends, he seems to be public enemy #1 of the government now. Is he going to go to jail? What's going on with him?
I sure hope not, man. A lot of people don't know about Roger and about, what he stands for. And he's a libertarian, so he stands for small government, people not in our business. He wants us to have the rights to be able to use steroids, growth hormone.
Right.
He thinks these things should be legal, okay? So in a lot of ways, a lot of people who are in bodybuilding, and by the way, he loves the sport of bodybuilding, they have similar ideas to him. He is a political strategist, and his whole life, all he's done for a living is make people president.
Right.
It's not just Trump. I mean, this goes way back.
No, I know. We interviewed him. You had him on the show with us. He was brilliant.
I can't get personally involved with what his career choice is. Let's just think about that for a minute, guys. So he made Trump president. So what? He actually, in ways, supported Obama, and before that, Reagan, and before that, Bush, and before that, Nixon. Who gives a shit? What he's good at, that's his job. When he's training, if he pushes to failure and he eats the way I tell him to and he looks good and doesn't lie to me, he's a good client. That's what it boils down to. Now, we became friends over the years. And I've seen how politics is dirty and nasty. And then I've seen how people call him a racist and people call him all these negative things. But I've been through tough times, and I've had to lean on my friend for money. And there's been a couple of occasions where I've called him up, literally like during the campaign, and he's like, this is the worst timing. And I'm like, I really need a few grand right now. Things didn't work out this month. I only take a few clients, a couple of them didn't sign, whatever. And it just threw everything out of whack. And he was like, yeah, man, I'll take care of you. So he's a solid guy. Right. He's never been a racist to me. And I hope he doesn't go to jail. And they have to have something for him to go to jail. And he tells me that there is no evidence. Now, I don't know whether that means, I did it, but there's no evidence. I don't know. I'm not stating that, okay? But the kind of person that he is, he asked me to come down to Florida after the show and hang out with him. That's what he said. He goes, you come out. He goes, I could use to train with you and chill with you and work out with you and stuff like that. I haven't been his assistant in so many years, but they are doing some kind of a witch hunt. Andrew Miller is a friend of mine. He's Roger's former assistant. This guy's father was married to his secretary, okay? We were friends. We used to go out on his boat and stuff when I lived in Miami. This is when I wasn't training bodybuilders other than, talking to Tony and stuff. And, they're going after his personal friends and stuff. They haven't bothered me. I don't think they are going to bother me. I don't have any significance in it other than just being his friend. But like I said, there does seem to be some sort of hatred between the FBI administrator and the administration and the people surrounding the administration. It's
sad. We wish him the best, and obviously, I got his Stone Cold shirt he sent me, so that's great.
I got his too. I don't like it. It's not a good bodybuilding cut. But
no, it's not. It's one of those stiff, thick shirts. Yeah, he's got to make some soft fit ones, like this Iron Asylum Alaska shirt I got on today.
Yeah, I like that one. That's a good one too.
Anyway, well, Ameen, thank you so much for joining us today, and obviously sharing some of your stories. And we'll bring you back. We got to talk about some new insulin protocols we're going to be bringing up. We'll probably get Colette Nelson on to talk about it as well, and we'll do another episode of this. And good luck at your show, and keep us updated.
Thank you. I wanted to just tell you really quick that if people want to follow some of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm not obviously putting it on YouTube because YouTube will take it down, right. And there's just no need for my family to be seeing this shit. Just straight up, I don't want my family seeing me, needles and stuff. I don't need it. Now, on the other hand, if you guys are interested in whether or not I do the injectable Lasix, do the IV bag, do the whole 9 yards, and what happens down at the North Americans, then you can get on my website, GuruAmeenAlai.com. You can check under the membership. The membership is free, and then go to the Mad Scientist, and it's $40 a month, and it'll give you access to all the videos in the past and going forward. It's a revolving thing. You can pull out and put back in whenever you want if you want to. And if you have any questions, you can add them to the video, and I'll do a Q&A answering the questions on the videos.
All right. Sounds great. Great resource of information, and we always love that. But that is going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and we'll see you next time.